Hi, I'm Kendra with WTMAstrology, and today I am talking about Gemini and Sagittarius compatibility. So, these are both mutable signs. Gemini is mutable air, Sagittarius is mutable fire, meaning that they are 180 degrees away from one another in the zodiac, and they are representing two different areas of life, but they're on the same axis. For Gemini and Sagittarius, that's the learning axis. And for a long time, I actually didn't understand what the difference between Gemini and Sagittarius was. I mean, I knew they were different, but there's a lot of similar things about these two, being that they're both yang signs and both mutable signs, and they actually have a lot of similar qualities, being that they're on the learning axis. However, I do understand now what their differences are. At first glance, these two get along really well, and actually, there are a lot of really positive things about this pairing because they have a lot of similar motivations, being that they're on the learning axis. They both really love getting new information. They both really love to learn. They're both very intellectual in different ways. The difference here is that Gemini is much more concerned with taking in a lot of new information and connecting bits of data together, making connections. Whereas Sagittarius is more of kind of a bird's eye view of a situation. So there's a little bit more of a holistic view with Sagittarius. Sagittarius can kind of look at the whole picture and kind of make an assessment from a bird's eye perspective without paying a lot of attention to details. And that's the difference between the Mercurial energy of Gemini and the Jupiterian energy of Sagittarius. You've got one that's really focused on the details and focused on the facts, and one that's really focused on almost like the vibes. Sagittarius can be more focused on the vibe of a situation. So we have Gemini is like lower education, which would be more about those facts and data, and then Sagittarius is higher education. That makes it sound like one is better than the other, which there isn't one that's better than the other, but higher education as in more of that almost spiritual perspective. Sagittarius is a very spiritual, faith-oriented sign as well, whereas Gemini really kind of needs hard data more than Sagittarius. But if you look at these two together on a surface level, they would have a lot of fun together. They're both easily distractible, they're both easily bored, they both really enjoy activity. Gemini is about activity and kind of expelling a lot of energies, socializing. And Sagittarius is very much about, adventuring and having new experiences and seeing new things. They're really going to get along because they have that same orientation towards activity and towards having new experiences and towards expelling energy. And they would be a very active couple. They would really enjoy one another's company, and they would really have a lot of the same kinds of interests. And air and fire is always a really fun combination. Anytime you get air and fire together, it's like combustible almost, whether that means that they're going to fight or it means that they're going to have a really rip-roaring crazy time and just own the town. But air and fire is always going to be really fun dynamic. I love air and fire together, being a fiery person myself. So it's going to be fun. And that's all I can for sure say about it. Some of the other positive qualities are simply that they both really love to learn. They are on that learning axis. They are on the, axis that is concerned with gaining new information and concerned with education. They would both enjoy debating things. I think Gemini would enjoy more of a debate than Sagittarius. Sagittarius, being a fire sign, might be a little bit more attached to their perspective and a little less inclined to separate the argument from emotional perspectives. Sagittarius is not a particularly emotional sign, but they are passionate. So they can really passionately attach themselves to ideas, whereas Gemini would be a little bit more about debating for the fun of it. So they could enjoy debating with each other if Sagittarius could kind of detach from their ideas about things. The point being that they would really enjoy those intellectual pursuits with one another. Again, it did take me some time to really understand what the differences between these two signs were, and they are very similar as far as opposite signs are concerned. But Gemini is mutable air. It's changeable ideas. And they have that mercurial energy. They're ruled by Mercury, which rules the nervous system and the brain, and has to do with facts and data. As far as the negative side of Gemini and Sagittarius together, This is where the differences actually come in. This is where you start to realize, oh yeah, they are different. And details. Mercury is much about those details. So Gemini really loves details. Maybe not like in the same way Virgo loves details, but Gemini does love those details. And they like to debate using facts and data and kind of having reasoning behind all of what they're saying. Even if, Gemini being that dual-natured sign, they have facts and data supporting both sides. They can be very all over the place, kind of. Gemini can be very all over the place, gathering a lot of data from a lot of different places and collecting a lot of details. Detailed information, a lot of little bits of data. That's just the detail-oriented nature of Mercury. And then you have the influence of Sagittarius, which is once again that bird's eye view, more of that holistic perspective. It's about the experience. It's going to be a little bit more concerned with anecdotal evidence than Gemini typically. Sagittarius does need reasoning for the things that they think, but it's really more about their perception. They're looking at things from, again, that bird's eye perspective, maybe a more spiritual or philosophical perspective. Sagittarius is a very philosophical sign as well. So they can look at possibilities more easily from that bird's eye perspective. They can look at things from a much more broad perspective, whereas Gemini is going to be about those details and that data, and they're going to need like evidence for things. And this wouldn't just be in the context of a debate, this would be in kind of everyday life. As a Sagittarius moon who has a lot of family members who have Gemini placements, I can tell you it can be rough. It can be rough as a Jupiterian moon dealing with Gemini energy, because I feel that I'm very laid back in a lot of ways having a Jupiterian moon. I feel that I'm very wait and see. I have a perspective that's much more about possibilities. I'm willing to allow an experience and see what happens from there. And my Gemini relatives are much more, again, detail-oriented. Much more detail-oriented, and they need me to kind of support the things that I'm saying with data, or they really want to talk about details. And Sagittarius is not a sign that's concerned with details. Again, we look at the big picture perspective, and those details can be very irritating to us. Gemini or Mercurial energy can be kind of grating on Jupiterian energy because they are very detail-oriented. And then again, Jupiterian energy can grate on Mercurial energy because we don't pay attention to details, and Gemini really knows that there are situations where details are very much needed. We do need details in many, many areas of life. Sagittarius can look over the details a lot. So some of the dynamic that you can see with Sagittarius and Gemini energy is that once again, you have Gemini who is about those details, about that data, and you have Sagittarius who is looking at things from a more broad philosophical standpoint. You have one person, Gemini, who is putting out a lot of nervous energy. And you have Sagittarius who doesn't want to give those detailed answers, who doesn't even really think in those terms. They have that faith, they have that optimism. Sagittarius just trusts that everything is going to be okay. And Gemini and Mercurial energy in general is not quite as trusting. They can't just put their trust in something as easily as Sagittarius can. And it can really stress Gemini out to be presented with this laid-back energy that it ends up making them feel more stressed out because they feel like they have to kind of cover for what Sagittarius is not doing. Sagittarius doesn't have a detailed plan, and their laid-back approach can actually stress Gemini more because, they feel like all the planning and all the details is going to fall on their shoulders, and they may not have a lot of trust in Sagittarius. Gemini is not an untrusting sign, but again, they need those details. They need that data, and Sagittarius is just like, oh, it's going to be all right. That's pretty much Sagittarius approach to nearly everything, but Sagittarius finds Gemini's need for those details nagging. They find the need to talk about everything irritating. As a Sagittarius moon, I can tell you, when Gemini comes to me wanting to talk about something that I look at as small, because I've got this more holistic bird's eye view of the situation, and they want to talk about something that I perceive as small. And now I'm not saying that it is small, I'm not saying that it's unimportant, but to me it feels unimportant because that's not my approach. When they do that, it gets on my nerves. I think, I don't want to talk about this. I don't think that we need to talk about this. You should just trust that it's going to work out in that moment. And we need both of these energies. We need that laid back energy, but we also need the energy that's going to pay attention to those details because those details are important. It's important to remember that we need all of these. There's not one that's better than the other. They're both important. So in Gemini and Sagittarius pairing, you have to understand that you are both right in different ways. Gemini has that attention to detail, and that is needed in certain situations. And Sagittarius has that faith and optimism, and that's needed in certain situations. But these are opposites. So they're not going to naturally understand each other, but there's a lot that they can learn from each other. Your opposite sign can actually teach you a lot. Sagittarius could learn from Gemini to have a little bit more attention to those details. And Gemini could learn from Sagittarius to just relax and trust the process a little bit. Just trust that everything's going to turn out okay. So overall, I think that this could be a very positive pairing, and I actually think the oppositions can be very good for growth if the two people are willing to put up with a little irritation from one another and they're willing to relax a little bit and allow that person to be who they are, understand that even though you have different styles, you can really learn from each other. This can be a really positive pairing, and again, they can have a lot of fun together. Air and fire is going to have fun together regardless. I think Gemini and Sagittarius can really be entertaining to one another as well. That's all I had to say about the Gemini and Sagittarius pairing. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and please leave in the comments what you think of this pairing. I also wanted to remind you that I do offer relationship readings as well as a variety of other chart reading types in my store, and I'm leaving the link to that in the description of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and have a great day.